Hi, this is Chris at Clever Unicorn Games and the Unicorn Collective, back with another one of my interviews. Today we have Stephen Finn with me. How are you doing today, Steve?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Chris.
So what do you like to do when you're not making or playing games? What is your spare time taken up with?
There used to be one answer to that question all the time, and that was Ultimate Frisbee. So I've been playing Ultimate Frisbee for over 30 years, at very high level, national level player. But I've decided to kind of retire to that, and now I'm going to try to play ping pong, table tennis.
I love ping pong. Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
played
yeah,
ping
yeah.
pong a lot in my youth, especially. Not so much recently. Did play it. We went to Spain a couple of years ago on holiday and played a bit there because they had a ping pong table. But yeah, I love ping pong.
I've been not obviously not with the pandemic, but I was taking lessons, going to competitions. Do you know? Are you a puzzle guy, like the New York Times crossword puzzle? Is that something big where
Crosswords?
you
Oh
are?
yeah, we do. Yeah, we get crosswords. If there's one line on the
But
table, I'll do it. I don't actively seek out puzzles like that, but if there's one, so say I'm in a waiting room for something and there's a crossword up for
right.
grabs, I will do the crossword, Sudokus and things like
Well,
that as well.
the reason I mention is there's a famous guy named Will Shortz who edits the New York Times. He's a big puzzle guy. He's the one that owns the ping pong club, which is right, down the street from me. So whenever I say I play ping pong and people know where I live, they go, "Oh, do you know Will Shortz?" I'm like, So anyway, it's just an interesting little fact.
Just go back to the ultimate frisbee
Um,
thing. What's that?
yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds amazing.
Are you not familiar with Ultimate Frisbee?
No, I think I may have heard of it in the past.
Ah,
It rings a bell, but I
oh,
don't know.
jeez. All right, we got to get that to the Isle of Man. Ultimate Frisbee is uh, like American football with a frisbee crossed with soccer, with football.
Yeah, you got me.
So you have a 7-on-7 field. You are throwing it to your teammates who are constantly running. And anytime you drop the disc, the other team can pick it up and go in the opposite direction. And you're trying to score a goal by throwing it to your teammate. You can't run with it yourself. And you have like 10 seconds to throw. As with any sport, there's a bunch of things. But it's a very popular sport. It's going to be in the Olympics, I think, for the first time coming up pretty soon. They play all over the world. And I've played in about even, like 7 different countries and
So
whatever,
are you
30,
throwing are you
30
throwing the
different states.
frisbee into like a basket, or are you trying to get it past a certain
No,
point?
you're throwing it to other people on your team. So you're trying to like imagine a soccer game where you are kicking it to your teammates and you're just trying to get into an end zone
Ah, so there's an end zone. So you're
and
basically trying.
maintain possession.
So
You're
when
just
you
trying to
throw it
maintain possession.
to
Yeah.
score, do you have to like throw it to somebody who stood over the line in the touch zone, sort of thing? Is that how it's scored?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Exactly.
I like the sound
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. 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 So just go online and just put in Ultimate
Ultimate
Frisbee,
frisbee.
videos, and it's amazing sport. It's a very athletic sport. It's very, like there's lots of diving for the frisbee, layout blocks, very fast paced, everything.
Well, I've got a bunch of kids and
So,
we love playing frisbee, so that's good. I'm gonna look that up.
do you have any frisbee golf courses where you are? Do you know frisbee golf? This
Definitely
is
not.
something
We
great for
definitely don't.
kids.
This is the Isle of Man. We're
All
probably 60 or
right.
70 years behind everywhere else in most regards.
All
So
right.
yeah, no,
Okay.
nothing like
Well,
that.
I, you wouldn't. I would not be surprised if somewhere on your island there is one. But you basically you throw a frisbee. You could play by just marking trees and saying, "All right, we're going to start here and we're going to go hit that tree." But there's actually baskets that you throw the frisbee into, and that's how you count the hole. Like golf, you start at a tee and you go to the hole. But a good course will have like trees, down the fairway. So sometimes you're trying to like throw it right through a couple trees. They have different kinds of discs. It's an interesting game, and it's
That does sound really
most places.
interesting.
Yeah, it's fun. Anyway, so yes, I'm a frisbee guy, and technically it's not frisbee, but it's a disc because frisbee is a brand name. and I actually don't even use frisbees. So,
Yeah, no, there's lots of
and
different types as
yeah.
well. You've got the ones that are solid, and you've got the ones that are like a hoop, and there's all different types of them, isn't
Right, yeah, the aerobies. Yes.
there? Anyway, what would you say is your favorite board game? There's a hard one for you.
Yeah, I always hear that, and I just can't. I mean, to be honest, I don't have an answer. Here's the way I play games: is like I'm constantly playing new games. There might be some games that occasionally I'll go back to, and I'm like, oh, I love this. It's just a great game. Like, so I'll throw a couple out, like El Grande. I'll always play a game of El Grande. I played Through the Desert the other day, Reiner Knizia game. I always like playing Through the Desert. It's kind of simple. I will say that I started. I might be jumping ahead to one of your questions about why I got into board gaming, but this will answer the question about that. There's Michael Schacht, who designed Zularedo. He had a game. This is the game that got me into board gaming. It's called Web of Power, and it's been reiterated into Han, China, and I think there's a couple other new games out. But that game, if you had to say what game have I played the most in my life, it would be that, because when I first got into this kind of board gaming, like we just played it hundreds of times.
And would you say that's
So
that's the game that inspired you? Is that the game that inspired you to then start creating yourself?
that is the game that got me into this. I grew up in a family. I've got two brothers and a sister, and we played games. Like I played a lot of poker and hearts and card games. And we played the traditional kind of American games, Monopoly, Scrabble, and so forth. At some point, I got into Risk. And then there was a lot, and then when I went off to college and there was a long gap between really playing any games from my childhood. And in my 30s is when I was living in Seattle, and I went into a board game store. And at the time, I had just started playing Risk again with some friends. And I was like, maybe we should try something new. And I just happened to grab this game, Web of Power, because it looked like a Risk kind of game. But it said it was a shorter game, like it was said 45 minutes or something. And then that's what hooked me. And then I started going back to that store and just started buying more games.
So when coming up with a game, so when you have an idea in your head for a game, where do you go to first? What do you start with for taking that from your head to the table?
Yeah. So I've made a lot of games, and they've come in different ways. Um, I would say most of the time, I have a very loose theme, and I'm not a heavy thematic player. Like I don't think, all right, how can I take this theme and figure out what works? But instead, I'll just be like, what kind of theme can I do? And then I say, what kind of mechanics do I want? And I'll often design just kind of a mechanics of a game, and might then change the theme based upon the mechanics if I can't really make the mechanics fit the theme that I originally started with. In a couple rare cases, I started with a theme and tried to follow it through. But also in other cases, like so I don't know how familiar you are with my company or anything, but I usually self-publish, but I also will work with other publishers. And one relationship I have is with Pencil First Games. And so we have a little line of games that we work with. Beth Sobel. So Ed Baraf is the lead guy. It's his company. And I've worked now with with Beth Sobel, who does the artwork, and then Keith Mateka, who's the guy who did Role Player. He does the solo play of the games. So it's funny because I design the multiplayer game, and then he designs the solo, and there's zero interaction between us, none whatsoever. Like I haven't had a direct email with him ever. I don't think. I've seen him at a convention and I've talked to him, but we design game. So but the way that often works is like when I first met Ed, he was reviewing one of my games, and I discovered that he grew up in the town near, or actually where I was living at the time, and he was visiting. and he came over and he just laid out these cards that Beth Sobel did. They had these beautiful herbs, it's like these nice herbs, and he said, "Can you make a game with this?" So I actually, with him, I often get challenged like, "This is what I want. I want a game with like pretty flowers. Make a game with pretty flowers." And I say, "Okay," or the Whatnot cabinet, which was just funded recently, is like, "Can you make a game about like picking up knickknacks in a set collection?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll do that." But I'm not, anybody that plays my games knows, like, especially if you've ever played Biblios, the theme is, I mean, it's entirely irrelevant, really. I mean, in that game.
But
So,
that can be said
but
about
over the
so many
years,
games, though, can't it? That can be said about a lot of games.
oh
I mean,
yeah,
yeah. I
right,
mean, there's many out there that you could say this could have a different theme and still be as good a game. It doesn't matter about
right,
the theme that's tagged onto it. And that's the kind of way
yeah,
that I approach games as well. As I generally there'll be a rough theme there somewhere, but it's always about the mechanics. Make the mechanics work, and then see if that fits the theme you came up with originally. If not, change it, but keep the mechanics that are
right.
working so well.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the way it happens. So I'm developing a game right now with Ed, and he gave me a challenge. We ended up failing in that challenge, but in the process of going through it, I discovered like a neat little twist on a mechanic, and I said, "Oh, this one little thing I was doing in this game can now be the heart of the other game." And so now we have a new game with this mechanic that I pulled from somewhere else, and it fits the theme that we wanted. So it's it all worked out.
So you've taken many games now from your head all the way out to the gamers. Have you, or can you think of one time, or two if they're memorable, where you've hit a barrier or a hurdle and it's just stopped you dead, and you've thought at the time, I don't know, I'm going to get past this, and then how did you overcome that hurdle? And that can be within designing or publishing, whichever part you can think.
I hit a wall that was just like this puzzle. Like, I need to figure out a way to get it so that the first player order, like that, the decision of how to have first player is going to work smoothly. Now, the puzzle like that I often come up with is the game, is it fair to the first, the player order? How does that affect it? And so I'm often trying to struggle with a new way to come up with player order. Uh, these are little things in design, and I'll be just like sitting there for days and days and days, and some idea will come and it will solve the problem. And some of those problems, are very small. Some of them are big, but like, I don't have like a particular example of some major accomplishment. That, in other words, like, what advice do I give to people? So if that was the question, like,
That comes later.
how do I over it?
We've got that
Okay,
question
right.
later on.
Well, because to me, it's the same question in a sense. Like, how do I overcome the hurdle? And the way that I do it is I just put it aside and I go to bed, take a shower, and I just say, I'm done with this. I'm going to let it sit for a few days. And somewhere in that process, usually the idea comes up. So I mean, it's a good question, but for me, I have a hard time answering it because over the years, I've designed so many games. I get them all confused, and it's always the same process. It always is. I start a game, I start playing it. I think it's going to be great before I even play it, but then you realize, oh, so there's this problem, and typical problems keep coming up, and I find new ways to do it, but I can't give advice on how that happens. It's just like it seems to just
Well, you've
appear.
given great advice there. I mean, your answer,
Yeah.
yes, put it to one side and then think about it later, sort of thing. Put that to one side, work on something else, and it'll come to you. That's a great piece of advice right there. And that's something I don't think we've had that mentioned in this part of the thing before. So yeah, great.
And if
That
it
is good.
doesn't come to you, if it doesn't come, then you abandon the game. And I've abandoned many games. I mean, there's a cabinet back here is full of my prototypes, and there's just like, here's this game where I couldn't solve a problem, or here's this game, it wasn't as good as I was hoping. Maybe I'll go back to it. It was like a rough idea.
Yeah, no, that's right, and I don't think people realize as well that for every one game we might have really successful, we've probably got 10 or 20 on my case folders on my computer full of
Right.
folders with names of games that I've started working on that may never ever get touched again. Um,
Um,
have you ever played a game that you didn't like, and you don't have to name it, but what is the theme or the mechanic, or what was it that just put you off the game?
uh, okay. I don't have to name it. Should I?
No,
Does
no.
it matter if I name it?
Well, I mean, if you
It doesn't matter
most
if I name it.
about
Sure.
50-50, some people
I'll 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 name it. I usually don't like to talk negatively about games because I don't want to harm other people's games. But I really, really, really want to like this game. It's because it's new and it's by Kramer and Kiesling. It's Paris.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Not played it though.
Yes. Right. So what's interesting is I've played two games by them recently. One is more like a kids game, Adventureland. It was published by Haba, and that game is awesome for a kids game. It's got different variety and it's neat mechanics. Everything flows smoothly. And Paris, I really want to like because it's a good its idea is great. And the one thing I don't like about it is it just goes on too long. What it is. I mean, it's a really, really good game, but if they had just cut it down, and I know I was playing online, so I'll say I'm going to give it another chance in person. But the things I design quick games, but I don't mind playing some longer games. But if I'm going to play a long game, I want it to be engaging the whole time. I do play Stefan Feld is one of my favorite designers. But his games are the ones are the maximum amount of time. When I'm playing a game too, I also play very quickly. But his games, of all the games that I play, usually his games like Trajan and Castles of Burgundy or whatever, usually are an hour, hour and a half. If a game for me goes past an hour and a half, it has to be really, really good with different stages that make me interested. But if I'm just doing the same thing after an hour and a half, I'm done with it. I like chess, but I never play a real game of chess. I always play blitz. So if I ever play chess, we have to have a clock. It has to be 5 minutes. I'm not going to play an hour-long game of chess. Although that's engaging all the way through, I don't have the mental fortitude to be focused that long.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you as well. I'm exactly the same. It has to be a special game to go over 2 hours for me. Because after 2 hours, if it's not a special game, I'm sat thinking about what else I could be doing and not really enjoying the game. Yeah, and there's very few. I think the only two I've played where it goes over 2.5 hours that I really enjoy is probably Through the Ages and Twilight Imperium, but again, that really matters on who you're playing with.
Yeah. So I'm also kind of particular with the people that I play with. When I go to a convention or whatever, I just I know, I usually go to local things. If I'm not publicizing usually I go to conventions to present my own games and a demo and all that. But when I'm actually just playing with other people, I'm kind of careful because my time is very valuable. I don't want to sound like a jerk.
All our time's very valuable.
Yeah.
We've all only got a certain amount of time.
Everybody has valuable time, but just when analysis paralysis, I can get it in certain games, but I will choose to just play like crap. What happened in this game of Paris after an hour, I just said, for the sake of getting this freaking game over with, I know I'm not doing well. I'm just going to end the game and I'm going to lose. Because I'm a competitive person. I want to win. But I don't want to spend so much time that, the other people after me have to wait, and then they're going to spend that amount of time. It's too much. So I know the people who are subject to analysis paralysis. I know the games that lead to it. And I won't, I'll just avoid that person with that game and I'll be fine. But I do like to meet new people and all that.
I'm terrible for being that guy around the table. If somebody does take too long, my mouth just says, hurry up. So people get annoyed with me, you know. There's
Yeah,
that line where they take that little bit too long, and I'll go, "Come on, come on, come on, come on," and then obviously
yeah, yeah.
they get angry at me for the rest of the game. So yeah, it's best I don't play that kind of game with those people. So how has the state of the world affected how you're designing and even playing games right now? How has the current pandemic, amongst other things, prevented you or helped you with things that you're doing?
Might actually have helped me. Um, if only because I finally took the time to learn how to use Tabletopia and Tabletop Simulator. Because now I've loaded up. I'm still kind of getting used to I know how to use Tabletop Simulator, but how to put my games up there. There's a little bit more of a learning curve. It seemed like Tabletop Simulator, Tabletopia, because maybe it's because it's the first one I used, seems to just be simpler and more intuitive. I've been able to load up games up there, and I have one, so I have to pay a monthly subscription to have games. So I can have up to 5 games, but one of those is just like my playtest area, which isn't public. So I've been using that, loading up every new game into one of the setups, and I've now been able to actually get new playtesters, people all over the world. I mean, I guess I don't have any all over the world, but all over the United States. Well, if anyone here wants to play test my games,
Well, we have
I
some
could,
channels on the Discord. So there's channels on the Discord.
right.
There's also people on this Discord that are experts at putting things onto Tabletop Simulator as well. So if you need any advice, there's a Tabletop
Oh,
Simulator channel for you to just put
all
message
right. I see
question.
it right over there. Yeah. Oh, so that's great. So I would, I would be putting more things up on Tabletop Simulator if it was that. But in other words, the pandemic has just given me more time to learn how to do those things. I'm now using them. And because I sometimes pitch my game to bigger publishers, which I'm starting to do now more of. So I have established some relationships with publishers, and I just basically say, let's go on Tabletop Simulator, and I'll pitch the game. So in some ways, it's actually been a benefit. The one thing, obviously, I don't have is in-person playtesting.
So you've already touched on it earlier, but let's sum it up at the end for the viewers. What is the one main piece of advice that you would give to a new designer with an idea coming into this business? So they've got the idea, they want to put it to the table. What's the advice that you would give?
I mean, it's a very simple piece of advice, but I mean, is do it. I mean, well, it's really stupid, but you're gonna have an idea of a game. This is one of the things you're gonna think that it's good before you play it. You have to play it. So I mean, you have to play test it. You have to be open to criticism. I mean, I'm gonna give you a lot of advice. So I mean, one piece of advice.
That is fine. Go ahead. Give a
All right.
give a.
I mean, because I don't think there's just one piece of advice. I mean, maybe of all these things I'm going to mention, through rambling about it, something will come up as being the most important thing. That's kind of the way I get. It's the way I design as well. Throw a lot of shit out, something that's going to stick, and that's going to be the thing. So, one thing I do notice with people is there's a defensive attitude when like at a playtest session. People who've been doing it a lot learn how, in a sense, to just not respond, right? So if you go to a play test, don't defend what your game is supposed to do, because whatever you have in your mind, your game is going to be played by other people, and you want them to have a good experience. So if they're not having a good experience, right, you have to say to yourself, well, it could be their fault or it could be mine. And how common is it, right? So like, I know also though not, and so there's also the contrary advice. Don't listen to every piece of advice, right? So you
That
have to be open. At the same time, you have to know. For example, like I'm trying to make a quick, easy game that is pretty light, and I know a certain person's going to give me advice to make the game deeper because they like deeper games. You can avoid that. But if they say, I didn't have fun, or I was frustrated, or this, didn't feel right, that's when you listen to them.
that's brilliant. That is
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, yeah, that is absolutely brilliant. It's filtering out the people that want to change it to a game they would like from the people that are just frustrated with the game itself. Yeah,
So,
good.
so through this conversation, I'm going to narrow it down and say here's the one piece of advice. Then is ask for criticism and ask people to be brutally honest, and then just listen.
Love it.
And then later, think about it. You can then dismiss it, or you can whatever. Make sure you get honest criticism.
Well, Steve, that was absolutely brilliant. And thank you very much for coming and speaking to me today.
Thanks for inviting me on.